Hey friends, it's me, Miss Jenny. We are going to continue reading Henry and the Clubhouse. And Henry was just talking with Mr. Capper about getting subscriptions. I know it's hard to get some started sometimes, said Mr. Capper sympathetically. I'll tell you what to do. The other day, I saw a sold sign on a house on your route. When the new owners move in, you march right up to the front door, ring the doorbell, and sell them a subscription to the paper. Yes, sir. Mr. Capper made it sound so easy. March right up and sell them a subscription, just like that. I'll try, Mr. Capper, said Henry, who knew the house the district manager was referring to. It was the house where he had once hoped to get enough old boxes to build a doghouse. It seemed a long time ago. And so, each day, as Henry delivered his papers, he watched for the new owners to move into the empty house. When he finally did see packing crates and empty cartons stacked on the driveway, he decided he should give the people a little time, say about a week. That would let them get settled before he marched right up and rang that doorbell. The next afternoon, Mr. Capper said, Well, Henry, I see the new owners have moved into the empty house. I'm going over today as soon as I finish my route, promised Henry, knowing he could not put off the task any longer. When Henry had delivered his last paper, he hung his canvas bag in the garage, washed his hands, combed his hair, and, followed by Ribsy, walked the 2 blocks. He did not ride his bicycle because it seemed more businesslike to go on foot. Fuller Brushman did not ride bicycles. As he approached the house, he whispered to himself some of the things he planned to say. Good afternoon. I'm Henry Huggins, your journal newsboy. I deliver the journal to a lot of your neighbors. Well, that much he was sure of, but he did not know what to say next. Find a selling point, Mr. Capper always said. Talk about some part of the paper that would interest a new subscriber. Henry walked more and more slowly. Finally, Ribsy had to sit down and wait for him to catch up. The journal had a good sports section, a good church section. How was Henry supposed to know what would interest a new subscriber? What if he told someone about the church section when all he wanted was to read the funny papers? But before Henry could decide what to say, he met Beezus and her little sister Ramona. Ramona was wearing a loop of string around her neck. The ends of the string were fastened with Scotch tape to a cardboard tube. Hi, Henry said to Beezus. What are you doing? Keeping Ramona away from the television set, answered Beezus. Mother says she spends too much time in front of it. Ask me my name, Ramona ordered Henry. Henry could feel no enthusiasm at all for this new game of Ramona's. What's your name? He asked in a bored voice, rather than risk Ramona's having a tantrum because he would not play. Ramona held the paper tube in front of her mouth. My name is Danny Fitzsimmons, she answered, looking down at the sidewalk and smiling in a self-conscious way that was not at all like Ramona. It is not, contradicted Henry. You aren't even a boy. She's just pretending she's being interviewed on the Sheriff Bud program, explained Beezus. That's her microphone she's holding. Oh, was all Henry could find to say. My name is Danny Fitzsimmons, repeated Ramona, smiling shyly in an unusual, un-Ramona-like kind of way. And I want to say hi to my mommy and daddy and my sister Vicky, who's having a birthday in Mrs. Richards, who's my kindergarten teacher, and Lisa Kelly, who is my best friend, and Gloria Lifton, whose cat just had kittens and she might give me one, and her dog Skipper, and all the boys and girls in my kindergarten class, and all the boys and girls at Glenwood Primary School, and Georgie Bacon's sister Angela. But I won't say hello to Georgie because I don't like him. And for Pete's sake, Henry was disgusted with Ramona's new game. Why don't you just say hello to the whole world and be done with it? He had no time for this sort of thing. He was on his way to sell a journal subscription. He had to get back to the clubhouse. So long, Beezus. And Bobby Brogdon, who has a loose tooth, Ramona was saying as Henry went down the street. When Henry came to the house that was his destination, he turned to Ribsy and said, "Sit." Not because he expected Ribsy to sit, but because he wanted to put off ringing that doorbell a little bit longer. He had not decided what to use as a selling point, because he could not even guess what might interest a new neighbor. Ribsy sat a moment, and then got up and sniffed at the shrubbery. "I said, sit," Henry told his dog, deciding it would be a good idea if Ribsy really did sit. Some people were very particular about dogs running through their flowers, and he was anxious to make a good impression. Like the good dog he was, part of the time, Ribsy sat once more. But he did not stay seated. He stood up and wagged his tail. "Sit," ordered Henry sternly as he started up the steps. Ribsy appeared to think it over. "Sit," Henry raised his voice. Ribsy waved his tail as if to say, "Do I really have to?" A strange dog, a Dalmatian, came trotting around the house and began investigating Ribsy. The dogs sniffed around each other. Henry did not pay much attention. Dogs who were strangers to each other always did this. Next, a woman who was wearing an apron and had a smudge of dust on her cheek appeared in the driveway. She was older than Henry's mother. Probably she was old enough to be a grandmother. But before Henry had a chance to speak, the Dalmatian left Ribsy and frolicked over to its owner. Ribsy, an agreeable dog who was ready to play, followed. That was Ribsy's mistake. Now he was trespassing on the Dalmatian's territory. The Dalmatian began to growl deep in his throat and to hold his whip-like tail stiff and straight. Ribsy stopped short. This was his neighborhood. He was here first. It was the Dalmatian who was trespassing. Each dog began to resent the other's looks, sound, and smell. "Ribsy," Henry spoke sharply. "Ranger," the woman spoke sharply too. The dogs paid no attention to their owners. Each was too intent on letting the other know exactly what he thought of him. The growls grew louder and deeper as they raised their lips and bared their teeth as if they were sneering at each other. "And just who do you think you are?" Ribsy's growl seemed to say. "I have just as much right here as you have," Ranger's growl answered. "No, you don't," said Ribsy. "I was here first." "I'm bigger," growled Ranger. "You're a bully," growled Ribsy. "Get off my property," Ranger told Ribsy. "You make me," Ribsy told Ranger. "Cut it out, both of you," ordered Henry. Planning to grab Ribsy's collar and drag him away, Henry jumped down from the steps to the lawn just as the growls erupted into snarls and the dogs went for each other's throats. "Ranger!" shrieked the woman. "Ribsy!" shouted Henry. The dogs were on each other in a twisting, tumbling tangle that seemed to be made up of feet, fangs and tails. Henry ran over to the snarling, yelping pair, and just as he was about to grab Ribsy's collar, he found the other dog's mouth in front of his hand. Quickly, he drew back. He saw that he could not stop the fight, and since he could not, he wanted Ribsy to win. If it had not been so important for him to sell a journal subscription, he would have yelled, "Go get him, Ribsy!" "Look out!" shouted the woman. "Don't let him bite you!" Doctors began to gather on the sidewalk to watch the excitement. "Dog fight! Dog fight!" one boy yelled. "The hose!" someone shouted. "Turn the hose on them!" "I can't!" cried the new neighbor. "I don't know where it is." "Hey, look at old Ribsy," said Scooter, who had ridden over on his bicycle to see what the noise was all about. "Go get him, Ribsy!" "You keep quiet," ordered Henry, even though he wanted to cheer his own dog on. Your mutt couldn't beat a Chihuahua," scoffed Scooter. "He could too," said Henry hotly. He wasn't at all sure Ribsy could beat a Dalmatian, but he could beat a Chihuahua. Henry was positive of that. "Who's winning?" asked Robert, who had just arrived along with Beezus and her little sister Ramona. "The new dog," answered Scooter, and rode on down the street as if the fight was already over. Half afraid that Scooter might be right, because the new dog was both bigger and younger than Ribsy. Henry tried once more to reach into the snarling, rolling mass of dog to grab Ribsy's collar. He didn't have a chance. A man grabbed Henry by the arm and pulled him away. "Don't you know that's a foolish thing to do? Those dogs might bite you." "Yes, but he's my dog," Henry tried to explain. "I don't want him to get hurt." The next door neighbor was screwing the garden hose into the faucet. He turned on the water and advanced toward the dogs with a gushing nozzle in hand. "Stand back, everybody," he yelled, and turned the full force of the hose on the dogs. Water sprayed in all directions. Still, the dogs snarled and snapped. The man with the hose moved closer so that the force of the hose was stronger. The stream of water caught Ribsy right in the face and blinded him for a moment. This gave Ranger the advantage. He seized Ribsy by the scruff of his neck, and though Ribsy was a medium-sized dog, Ranger began to shake him. The man turned the hose in Ranger's face. Ribsy wrenched free and ran dripping down the street with his tail between his legs, ki-yi-ying all the way. The Dalmatian was after him in a flash of black and white. Henry did not know what to do, whether to run after Ribsy and try to rescue him or stay and tell the woman he was sorry his dog got into a fight with her dog, even though it was her dog that started it all. He also wondered what Mr. Capper would think of all this. A fine job of marching right up and ringing the doorbell this had turned out to be. Before Henry had a chance to decide what to do, Ranger came trotting back down the street looking much pleased with himself. In the next block, Ribsy could be heard ki-yi-ying toward home. "Bad dog," said Ranger's owner, shaking her finger at the pet. Ranger shook himself with a great clatter of license tags. He did not look one bit sorry. Instead, he looked disapprovingly at Henry, who felt it was wise to retreat to the sidewalk. Ranger walked to the foot of the steps, flopped down, and looked around as if to say, "I am monarch of all I survey." Henry was still trying to collect his thoughts and say something. How had he planned to begin this sales talk? "I am Henry Huggins, your journal carrier." But what came next? Ribsy's ki-yi-ying in the distance did not help Henry to think. Before Henry said anything, Ramona passed him and walked right up to Ranger's owner. "Are you the new lady?" Ramona asked. "Why, yes, I am, dear," answered the woman, pleased to have a little girl making friends with her so soon after she had moved into a strange neighborhood. For once, Henry was glad to see Ramona. If she talked to the lady a minute, he would have a chance to think of his sales talk once more. Ramona looked straight at the new neighbor. "Remember," she said with a ferocious frown as she pointed her finger, "only you can prevent forest fires." Henry groaned to himself. The lady looked startled. She had no answer for Ramona. Beezus ran up to Ramona and grabbed her by the hand. "Don't pay any attention to her," she said apologetically. "She says that to everybody because she hears it on TV so much. You know, Smokey the Bear comes on and says it between commercials." "Oh, yes." The lady did not look as if she understood at all. Perhaps she did not own a television set. "Come on, Ramona." Beezus tugged at her sister's hand. Oh, this was too much. Henry felt the only thing he could do was leave. First, his dog got into a fight with the lady's dog. And now the little sister of a friend of his practically accused the woman of going around setting forest fires. This was no time to sell a subscription. I'm sorry about the fight," he blurted and left quickly, followed by Beezus, who was pulling Ramona along by her hand. "Remember, only you can prevent forest fires," Ramona shouted back to the lady. That Ramona, thought Henry crossly. She was only 5 years old, but she was the biggest pest in the neighborhood. At the corner, Henry paused to glance back. The woman was nowhere in sight, but Ranger was sitting on the front porch as if he was standing guard. It seemed to Henry that the dog was challenging him to set foot on his property. "Just go ahead and try it," he seemed to say. "Go on, I dare ya." To Henry's surprise, Mr. Capper did not ask the next day if Henry had sold a newspaper subscription to the new neighbors, and Henry suspected Mr. Capper wanted him to bring up the matter. He didn't see how he could come right out and say, "I didn't get that new subscription because the new neighbor's dog didn't like my dog." Henry made up his mind that, since he left Ribsy at home while he delivered papers, he would stop on his route this very afternoon and sell that subscription. By that time, Ramona would be home watching television, so she would not spoil it a second time. When all his papers were folded and stuffed into the canvas bag, Henry mounted his bicycle and zigzagged down the street, pitching journals left and right. He was wearing a different t-shirt today, and he hoped the new lady might have been so busy watching the dog fight that perhaps she didn't notice what he looked like. "Good afternoon," he whispered to himself. "I am Henry Huggins, your journal carrier." When Henry came to the house, he saw Ranger resting on the front porch, his nose on his paws, his eyes watchful. "Hi, Ranger," he said in his most friendly manner. Ranger's answer was to jump to his feet, barking furiously, and leap down the steps after Henry. Oh my goodness. There was nothing for Henry to do but pedal down the street as fast as he could go, with the dog snarling and snapping at his right foot every time he pushed on the pedal. Never had Henry ridden a bicycle so fast. Oh man, that's scary. Getting chased by a dog, oh my goodness. By the time he reached the corner, he could no longer breathe in all the air he really needed to keep him going, and each time he bore down on the pedal, he expected to lose a piece of his jeans, or maybe even a piece of his foot. By the middle of the next block, Ranger suddenly stopped chasing Henry, turned around, and trotted home with an air of having done his duty. It seemed to Henry that the dog was not even out of breath. All right, friends, that's where we're going to pause today. Can't wait to see you tomorrow and read some more. Have a great night.